What's good, nerds? How's everything look and sound? If you couldn't tell, this is not my usual setup. Want to make sure everything is good before we get going. By the way,
everybody.
We have a guest here. You might have heard of him. And if you haven't, you've probably still heard of the things he has done. Yes, live and in person. We're both in SF. Why not, right? Oh, my laptop is not muted. Fun. That was Twitter. Of course it was Twitter making sound without my permission. Cool.
Hey, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate you hopping on last minute and everything like that. So, of
course.
It's cool. We're both in San Francisco, a few blocks away from each other, actually. So,
Yeah, really convenient. Yeah, don't be too specific about the location for the sake of...
Sure.
Yeah. Regardless, it was awesome that you were down to come through. It means a ton. It's clear you want to be sure everybody actually understands what happened, and I want to take the opportunity to chat with you and clarify any things that I might have gotten wrong, as well as try to get some really solid answers to some of the questions that people have concerns about. So super excited to get started.
Thank you.
Just want to make sure everything is good with stuff. Prove it's not pre-recorded. Hi, NoAx.de. It's not pre-recorded. I can't really show chat live easily because I don't have an HDMI from my computer over to the stream rig. But just want to make sure everything looks and sounds good before we get too deep in, because this is going to be a long one. I'm recording on a whole separate camera as well, so in post we can make it an even better setup and edit. But wanted to get everything right here live, so you know we're not hiding anything.
That's the thing. I'm trying to be transparent.
Yeah.
So
We really appreciate that. Thank you so much, man. So, yeah. Any last words, chats about audio, video quality? We all good?
if y'all want to follow me, I'm at Photomat on Tumblr, Twitter, and my domain is ma.tt to check out my WordPress blog.
That just reminded me, you own Tumblr, don't you?
Yeah, we do.
Love that.
So we got, besides WordPress, we got Tumblr, Pocket Cast, Simple Note, Beeper, Text, Day One. We have a lot of other apps. And then on WordPress, we've got like WordPress, WooCommerce, WordPress VIP, which hosts like whitehouse.gov. What else? And then a bunch of plugins like Sensei and other things that like are on top of WordPress.
Good stuff. I did not know it was that wide of a collection. Dang.
Yeah, actually, it's that's part of the reason WP Engine actually makes more money from WordPress than us. WordPress is only about half of our business.
Interesting. I hadn't have thought about it that way. Well, on that note, I think the first question actually leans into this. You are the sole owner of WordPress.org, if I recall.
Yep.
What is the relationship between WordPress.com, WordPress.org, and the WordPress Foundation and you? Like, can you give us an overview of how the structure here works?
It's a little complicated, so we'll start there. When this, by the way, this all just started as like open source, random. No one knew what this was going to be big. I was 19 years old. It was 21 years ago. So how it is currently set up and how it has evolved is, so there's a WordPress Foundation, which is a nonprofit. That was created long after Automatic and WordPress.org. So what started first was WordPress, and then WordPress.org website. I just registered that, belongs to me. A few years later, I started Automatic as a for-profit. Originally, the WordPress trademark and everything belonged just to Automatic. And also, I did not control a majority of the shares or the board or anything like that. So Automatic had investors and everything. Years later, I basically negotiated with all those to take the trademark out of Automatic and move it into a nonprofit foundation. So we created a 501(c). Interesting, the foundation, to be approved by the IRS, the purpose of the foundation is not to develop WordPress code. It is for education. So that's why we do like WordCamps and educational things. If you look at the finances of the foundation, the actual foundation has no employees or anything. I think we got 23 grand in donations last year. Basically, we spend a few grand on like auditors and lawyers and stuff. Well, at least we used to only have to spend a few grand. WP Engine might make us spend a lot more. And then we re-grant all the rest of the donations out to things like Black Girls Code or like different things to like get more people involved with coding and education purposes. It also has, I'm going to make this a little more complicated, a for-profit subsidiary of the foundation, which runs all the WordCamps. So there's these things called WordCamps. They're community organized. The big ones have thousands of people, and then the small ones in different cities with hundreds of people. As you know, putting on an event, like we can't ask volunteers to have like insurance for a 2,000 person event on their personal thing. And also because people sponsor this, it can't be when the the sponsorship rules for nonprofits are actually very strict. So they couldn't say in their booth, like, we're the #1 host or fastest or something. So that's why we created this for-profit subsidiary. Kind of like there's a Mozilla Foundation and a Mozilla Corporation.
Or like OpenAI.
Well, that's a whole nother, that's a whole other can of worms. So that's called the WordPress, I think, community service or something. So that's the for-profit. That actually, if you look at it, I think has like $5 million a year running through it, but it's just run break even for the events. So WordPress Foundation holds the trademark. It has 2 licenses that's given out. A commercial license to Automatic, which uses it to run WordPress.com. Automatic can also sub-license that trademark to others for a fee.
So the WordPress trademark, although owned by WordPress.org and the WordPress
Foundation.
owned by the WordPress Foundation, the WordPress trademark has been licensed to WordPress.com and Automatic, which then does all further licensing.
So all the commercial stuff, Automatic has a license for. Then I, Matt Mullenweg, have a license to run WordPress.org, which is, if you look at what WordPress.org is actually huge. So we provide, hosting for the 60,000 plugins and themes. We provide the update servers. We do Openverse. So we actually got Openverse from the Creative Commons, the Creative Commons search. We now host and run all that. So all Creative Commons search things, that's all run through there. Forums, Slack channel for 49,000 people. There's a pro Slack version. So like we do a lot on WordPress.org. And that's me. So those are the 2. So I have kind of that like license to run WordPress.org and then Automatic has the commercial license.
Yeah, I think the big point of clarification here that is actually like helpful for me as well is that WordPress.org is not part of the WordPress Foundation. That is yours. And all commercial licensing for WordPress is not done through the nonprofit. The only commercial license is Automatics, and then that is sub-licensed to others.
We could not get WordPress.org being part of the foundation approved by the IRS.
Okay.
Right? Because when you think about it, WordPress.org benefits a lot of companies.
Yes.
Not just Automatic, but like every other host that's built on WordPress. Because nonprofits are like a tax thing, they're like, oh, well, wouldn't you just put everything into this tax-free thing and then you get all this R&D for free? So that's why it has to be separate.
Interesting. So what does the licensing agreement look like between Automatic and the WordPress Foundation? Like, is there like an on the books financial exchange for that?
It's an exclusive because Automatic owned the trademark.
Yes.
So basically, it gave the trademark away and it kept the commercial rights. So
interesting.
Remember, it was I had to negotiate all this because at the time, I was 20 something. I did not yet control Automatic and do all that sort of stuff. So
very interesting. That's a really good context to have. That the license started at Automatic. The WordPress Foundation was formed to be the owner of the trademark, and then the license for commercial stuff was kept there.
And can I say the reason I did this is because, again, 20-something, I was like, well, what if someone buys Automatic or the investors kick me out or something like that? Like if Automatic goes evil, how do I create a check and balance? So, by the way, I or Automatic could lose the license, the licenses if the WordPress Foundation determines we are not good stewards of the WordPress trademark. And the foundation has 3 board members. I'm one of them. So if 2 of the 3 decide that Automatic or me are not good stewards of the trademarks, we would lose our license. We'd have to rename WordPress.org or WordPress.com.
Very good to know. Who are the other 2 board members, if you don't mind us asking?
Mark Gosh and Shel Farley.
Very good context to have. How do I want to dive into this next part? So the boundaries are much clearer now. That was one of the most complex things. As you said, the relationship between all of these things is complex. The WordPress Foundation could take away stewardship of the trademark. And then there's also the problem of the government where if the trademark's not being meaningfully enforced, then it can become a generic term, which could then cause you to lose it regardless. Yeah. I know this is why a lot of companies like Nintendo are as harsh as they are about their trademarks because the risk of losing it is great enough that they will squash anything that might hurt it there. On the other hand, there are a ton of places where the WordPress trademark is being used in ways that are on the line. Like WP GraphQL, which is an open source project, or the WordPress pages and hosting like offerings on GoDaddy. I'm curious where you mentally draw the line for at what point is it worth taking action for something using WP or the WordPress like name.
Yeah, so when it's confusing to consumers. So no one goes to WP GraphQL and thinks it's us.
I honestly thought it was part of the WordPress core initially, like the WordPress like core set of like things that are maintained in the WordPress project, and was surprised to learn that it wasn't.
It might become, we have things called canonical plugins or community plugins, which are kind of like official ones. It might be someday, but right now it's not. So yeah, when it's confusing the marketplace. So I can't tell you how many times I get support requests for WP Engine, like people contact me because their site is down. We have lots of examples of people posting to Reddit like, hey, my WordPress engine is down. And in fact, all the people mad at us for cutting WP Engine off, why are they mad at us? They've never paid us $1, WordPress.org $1. They pay WP Engine
They're
for
mad
service.
because that change hurts the users more than it hurts the platform. And that's one of the things I wanted to talk about is that move, assuming the best possible faith and intent from you, with the goal being to not give WordPress or to not give things from WordPress to WP Engine for free when they are, in your belief, not contributing fairly back. If the goal was to alert their customers of the severity of this, would having the cutoff date initially not have been the exact same objective completed without having the immediate potential harm?
So WP Engine knew this was going to happen because I told them when they decided not to negotiate or do any engagement for a trademark license, that they were going to be banned from all WordCamps and community events and banned from WordPress.org. So they knew this was going to happen. It's their responsibility to communicate to their customers. And I think it's, I don't know.
I hate to like be in the weeds on it, but do you have records of those communications you'd be down to share later off stream so I can confirm or deny like that these actually happened off the record? Like I won't share the actual communications, just my yes or no if I feel like this is a fair representation of the communication you had.
What I can share with you is the term sheet that they got on Friday morning, which spells out them being banned from community stuff, and also that they had the option to either pay automatic for a trademark license or donate it in-kind hours. So they could.
So that was yesterday, was that? Or the Friday before?
The Friday before.
Okay.
So, and by the way, this was the result of more than like a year and a half of negotiations. I can find the exact dates. We've had other proposals to them in the past. They've had many, many opportunities to do this. Kind of came to a head at the WordCamp, but they've just been delaying for so long. We've been trying to do a deal forever. That's why I've had so many meetings and spent so much time with Heather and Lee and other people. So,
yeah, if there were records of any of these specific conversations happening, I know that a lot of people feel as though this was kind of sudden, and optically, externally, it absolutely was sudden. In particular, the decision to ban them from doing updates on WordPress.org it felt retaliatory to the legal action that was taken. In fact, you've even communicated about it as though it was retaliatory to the legal action taken, saying that if they are suing you, you don't want to work with them. There was no indication until this moment that this was a thing that they specifically were told would happen.
They have insisted on most of these meetings being in person or calls. So, but I do have the record of this term sheet, and I'm happy to show it to you right after the stream and everything. So
awesome. Really appreciate that, just to be as clear as possible with these things.
I can show you the email they got and who it went to. It went to Lee and Heather and everything.
Yeah, just the date, the time it was sent, who it was sent to, and what the contents were roughly is enough for us to have that confirmed. But I know just like from going through the responses to other interviews. No, we can do it after us. No worries there. But yeah, I think the timelines for these things are really important, and having confirmation that these. So remember for this. It feels like the reason nothing happened is a thing that has been shifting throughout this whole ordeal, where the reason that the WordPress.org access for plugins and updates was cut off was originally because they took legal action and you wanted to not be doing business with somebody taking action against you. Now it is that this was originally communicated as part of the negotiations that fell through. And these shifts are a thing that have people struggling to trust what you have to say. And I just want to make sure that we can identify the core path from start to finish of how we get to these individual things.
They cherry pick the text messages to publish.
Of course.
I would love for them to publish everything. I can actually, let me show you. I had my text to Heather months ago saying you're violating the trademark.
appreciate this, by the way. It's good to have the like actual records. And again, part of why it's nice to be able to do these things in person. It makes all of this chaos much easier.
Okay, July 17th. I'm going to read my text message.
Give me one sec to get my thing shifted around a little here. Cool.
It pains me every time I get your customers reaching out to me because they are confused by your use of the WordPress trademark and brand. It's really damaging the ecosystem. July 17th, 9:20 a.m. By the way, you can also see messages like, I invited her to my 40th birthday party. I thought I had a good relationship with her. Welcome back. I hope your sabbatical was good. Like, I mean, I'm not going to read all these messages because, I mean, they chose to publish without my permission, but I'm going to read my message there. So hopefully that's helpful.
Okay, in July, it was absolutely communicated that Matt was disappointed in WP Engine's branding and the confusion it was causing for people in the WordPress community and WordPress users. That I can absolutely see was communicated in July. The thing that I don't see is the direct link to the potential consequences of this not changing. And if that could be established at an earlier point, that would be really, really helpful.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to tee up your next question? I'll pull that up.
Awesome. Yeah, I will. I'm just going to do a quick chat to see how chat is feeling. How are we doing, y'all?
Of course, Thunderbird's being super slow.
Of course. I begrudgingly made the move to Superhuman.
Oh my
and
goodness,
it's made my
it's
life much
speech
easier.
balling now.
Of course. Oh, do you want my Wi-Fi quick? I can.
Yeah, I'm tethering right now,
Yeah,
but
I can
it's
throw
all,
you on my Wi-Fi quick if you
it's
want.
all right. Let me.
Okay.
This is my computer's crashing, so let me force quit this.
Never works when it needs to work,
Right?
and it always works when it doesn't matter.
Well, this has actually been so fun. You spun this up so quickly. I'm very impressed.
Thank you. Yeah, it was for those who couldn't have guessed. This was a quite last minute setup. I have all of my cameras, all of my lights, and half of my audio equipment down here in order to make this come together, and I'm really happy with the result. Yeah.
Let's see.
One
right,
misconception I'm seeing in chat already. This isn't a ThinkPad. This is a MacBook.
Oh,
Just suck how you're saying that.
so that's our CFO, Mark Davies. September 20th, 10:23 a.m. This is the term sheet. It's a one-pager. It's very simple. And see trademark license agreement. They can pay a royalty fee or commit 8% in the form of salaries to employees working on WordPress core features and functionality. Prohibition on forking and community. They'll be able to participate in work camps and everything like that. So, and then termination, etc. So this is a one-pager. It's very, very
Is there
simple.
anywhere in this that indicates that WordPress.org access and the ability for WP Engine customers to update their things the way that they have been this whole time was at risk? Because that's a really important detail that I'm not seeing communicated.
I agree it could be better in that term.
I
something we
want to be clear. It's
discussed.
not that this could be better. This is, I could not have possibly interpreted this way. So can I read this bullet point verbatim? Is that okay?
I'm planning to publish this, so yeah, go ahead and read it.
So this is point 4, which is the closest thing in here to indicating the potential issue.
There's also the forking thing.
Yeah, okay, so I'll read point 3 and 4, which are part of this agreement. Point 3 is prohibition on forking. WP Engine will cease and desist from forking or modifying any of Automatic's WooCommerce's or its affiliate software, including but not limited to plugins and extensions, in a manner that disrupts any partnership between Automatic and its commercial partners. This is in reference to the Stripe stuff for context.
Yeah, that's the other thing. Is it's not just a WordPress trademark? They're also violating the WooCommerce trademark.
Yes. So to finish the bullet point, so I have the whole thing verbatim, this is after the words commercial partners. For example, WP Engine will refrain from changing attribution codes included in any software by Automatic. This is because previously I believe it was the WooCommerce Stripe plugin.
Yeah.
The WooCommerce Stripe plugin had a field indicating who it was coming through, which is something that Stripe uses to attribute what plugins are causing people to use Stripe, and they pay a fee to the people who that code belongs to. It's almost like an affiliate code. in order to allow for Stripe's partners that are embedding it in things like WooCommerce to pay them back directly. And one of the things WP Engine did was change the ID that indicated who the affiliate was that was the partner that made that, so that anybody who is using the same plugin on WP Engine, the affiliate fees were going to WP Engine and not to WooCommerce or Automatic. Is that a fair representation?
Yes.
Awesome. So now for point 4 from here, community. This is the point that is the closest thing in here to indicating that WordPress.org access would be restricted for WP Engine. WP Engine will be able to participate in WordCamps, or it starts with community. So point 4, community. WP Engine will be able to participate in WordCamps and WordPress community events. If you choose the royalty fee, we will attribute a portion of Automatic's 5 for the future contributions to WP Engine in a public way, so the community understands your commitment to the long-term flourishing of WordPress. Do you understand how there is nothing here that indicates the WordPress.org cutoff?
I think that's a fair criticism.
Okay.
So that's a fair criticism.
Okay. So
I will say that they understood, and hopefully now they really understand. And that's why we've given them until Monday night to fix it all up. So,
can we agree that initially it should have been an announcement that would happen on Monday night? That it would have achieved the same goal and caused less immediate damage, and most importantly, burned less immediate trust with you?
Yeah, that's
I'm
fair.
keeping the mic a little bit closer.
Oh,
too.
sure.
Yeah.
The other thing that they haven't really talked about that I don't think people appreciate is they can't log into WordPress.org anymore. So they need to now find some way to host and distribute all their plugins. So they haven't talked about that. Their plugins, everything's basically frozen. So that's they have to figure that out. There's 2 million installs of advanced custom fields. They need to figure out how to get all those people updated using their own update servers and everything. So,
and you understand that like the immediate group that is harmed by this isn't WP Engine so much as their customers, because they're just as screwed, but they can't even do anything about it. Now they're stuck waiting on WP Engine to make these changes.
It's the people who spend $500 million a year with WP Engine. Yes.
I thought their revenue was $400 million a year, but that's all of them. Like, that's a lot of people who have like a $5 a month site that they're hosting for their barber shop that's now potentially insecure. That's people who are hosting websites for a retirement home. That's people who are...
I don't know exactly. They can publish their revenue if they want to correct that. My estimate, with the 1.5 million sites they claim to host, is $500 million. So that's just me guessing. So that's my opinion.
Yes.
They can correct that if they want to.
Yeah.
If it's 400 and they were only doing 40 hours per week, I think that's still bad. If it's 100 and they were only doing 4 hours a week, that's pretty bad. So
one more point I think is important regarding the agreement there. It was very clear that their options were either to contribute 8% of their revenue or 8% of their equivalent of revenue in engineering time spent.
And it said, or any combination.
Or any combination, yes. Thank you for the clarification there. Can we agree that a sudden 8% cut in your business's top line is something that takes a lot of time to plan around and potentially eat?
So this was based on an analysis of their business, which I can't comment on because I think it'd be covered by NDA and other things. But I think it's safe to guess that they would still be profitable to the tune of tens of millions of dollars free cash flow per year. And you understand business, so you know what that means, even with this licensing fee. So yes, would they be less profitable? Yes, but they would still be very profitable, more than us.
Yeah. Even then,
we plow basically, we're kind of break even right now. We plow everything back into development, everything back into open source.
So on the topic of contributing back, I have 2 directions I want to go with the contributing back part, because I think they're important. The first is what qualifies as contribution, and the second is at what point is WordPress not in need of additional contributors. So I want to start with the first one, which is the ecosystem around WordPress. I brought up WP GraphQL earlier. WP GraphQL is a plugin that is used by a lot of people. I didn't find an easy way to, or I didn't take the time to look into the numbers, but I know it's a well-regarded and well-supported portion of the ecosystem. I know Gatsby was really involved with it too, which is a framework that I'm deep in the lore of as a JavaScript and React person specifically. I know that when I looked at the commit charts, the person who wrote over 90% of the code for WP GraphQL is an engineer at WP Engine.
I think they acquired it, yes.
I don't know what the order of events was in terms of that individual working at WP Engine, but the majority of the continued support and maintenance of that plugin is coming from WP Engine. We can agree on that, right?
Yes.
Awesome. I didn't look to see if there were too many other examples, but I wanted to start with this one in particular. Does contributing to the ecosystem outside of repos that are on like the WordPress or WordPress community projects, in your mind, count as contributing towards the WordPress community as a WordPress developer?
Okay, you just made that a nuanced question.
Okay.
So I'll say we have this program Fire for the Future, and what would count is who owns the plugin. So yes, we make the Jetpack plugin. I think it benefits WordPress a ton. We don't count that as a Fire for the Future contribution because we own it. So if WP Engine wanted to make WP GraphQL owned by the community, then yes, their contributions would count. They can make it a community plugin. If they own it and they use it to promote their paid services, then it's part of the ecosystem, but it's also just promotional. So they could, by the way, they could also donate like something like advanced custom fields would be awesome for core. They could contribute that. Automatic has taken lots of features we've developed in Jetpack and WordPress.com, taken it out of our paid stuff and then put it into core. So it belongs to everyone.
Do you have any examples of WP GraphQL being used to promote WP Engine? Because I'm looking now at like the GitHub repo and their website, and they put Gatsby before WP Engine, which is the only instance of WP Engine on the GitHub page is special thanks to Gatsby, a dead framework, and WP Engine for allocating development resources to push the project forward. Other than that, there is no indication that WP Engine is being used to benefit, or that WP GraphQL is being used to drive customers to WP Engine directly. And on their website, it is similar. There's a impossible to read because they're CSS stocks, tiny WP Engine link at the bottom that is almost the same blue as the page. So literally can't even read the promotion.
Okay, so Automatic makes simple notes. It's free for use. Should that be counted as a community contribution on WordPress.org because it's free?
Give me 1 sec. I lost my notes page somehow. Oh, because Notion is the worst. That's how.
I mean, companies can give away free things to improve their image, for marketing, for other reasons. It kind of burnishes their image. So, but should Simple Note count as a community contribution?
I'm not familiar with Simple Note.
It's a Notes app.
Oh.
It's free to use.
I think if that Notes app is built specifically around the WordPress architecture and ecosystem and is used by a significant number of WordPress developers and not used by people who aren't using WordPress, where it's like, if there's like a Venn diagram here, all WP GraphQL users are GraphQL users, or are WP users.
Yeah.
Yes, they are all using WordPress.
How about the Jetpack plugin?
Yes. Jetpack plugin, I think I would be totally okay with being included as part of WordPress core and counting as one of those contributions.
And the WooCommerce plugin?
Can the WooCommerce plugin? Yeah, I would say so too.
Okay, if we were to count those things, our contributions would not be 4,000 hours a week.
Yeah.
It would be tens of thousands of hours per week.
I'm okay. I don't think the...
I mean, it would make
not
us
to be
look way
crude,
better.
but I don't think like the dick waving contest of how many hours a week is particularly meaningful. I can go into why in a bit, but I want to focus in on this point of there are lots of ways to contribute to an ecosystem. And I think we've kind of arbitrarily defined the lines at which these definitions exist to the point of you, to your own detriment to an extent too, because I think the Jetpack plugin is something that I would consider contribution to the WordPress ecosystem. And I would consider that within the hours that you're counting. I think that's totally fair. I would draw this line in a different place.
So let's call that the Theo standard.
Yeah.
So you said they have one engineer on WP GraphQL?
2 engineers, but the main engineer that contributed over 90% of the code is a WP Engine employee. And then number 4, who is the second most active over the last month, but the 4th highest contributor of all time, they are also a WP Engine.
So let's say now under the Theo standard, they're contributing 120 hours a week instead of 40. Do you feel like that is fair for a $500 million a year, roughly? Business?
Depends on what they're spending their money on. I don't like to compare in these ways. Like, I don't look at the percentage of how much money a company makes against how much time they're spending on open source stuff. I want to kill these blanket statements of they don't contribute anything to the WordPress community.
So let's say Automatic under your standard is now contributing 8 to 15,000 hours per week.
Yes, I would be surprised if Automatic was contributing less than like 20 to 30% of its resources, revenue, and everything else towards WordPress. I would be surprised if it wasn't. In the same sense that like Vercel, for example, I would expect that they're contributing probably 20 to 30%, if not more, of their efforts into Next.js.
So just to be clear, I don't agree with your standard.
Yes.
But under the Theo standard, we're doing 20 or 30%. I think that's
it's-
good. And we asked them to do 8.
I don't think the amount that you put in, like, if I was to go run 100 miles, I can't then demand everybody else runs 10 miles. Just because I go really far doesn't mean I can set these demands and expectations outside of what I have done, especially in an instance where this is an open source community, especially when there is no standard set by any others. Like, are there any other companies that are contributing 8% of the revenue to WordPress right now?
Easily, yeah. So, but okay, if Lee and Heather want to negotiate these contributions being recognized, pick up the phone, call me, happy to talk. So, sure. Happy to negotiate with them. But currently, under the current standards published with Fire for the Future, it only counts if it belongs to the community, to the commons. So it needs to be a community plugin or a non-commercial plugin. So commercial plugins are not counted.
Okay. So what companies are currently meeting this, either the 5% for Fire for the Future, or ideally, if there are any, the 8% for the trademark negotiation that you showed me?
So all the Fire for the Future stuff is public. I would say one company that was quite impressive is Yoast.
Yes.
I don't know their exact percentage, so I don't want to speak to it exactly, but they were pretty amazing for how they would actually do like community days. So like the whole company would get together and do contributions. I just published, there's Anil at Multidots said, hey, I realized we're not contributing enough. And he made a public commitment to try to get them to 5%. So that's awesome. And yes, you can't do it overnight. They could write a check overnight. They have the money in the bank. Or they could hire the people. It would take them a little longer. Happy to switch that over time. But yeah, you can aim for it. By the way, Fire for the Future is not a requirement. It's just aspirational, you know? And it's self-reported. It's not like we're even auditing this. So it's just what they are reporting their own contribution. So they get to choose, by the way, their hours. Each individual profile has to set their hours.
I think the thing that's hard for me is there is no precedent for this anywhere else in the open source world that I know of or can think of. I'm curious, is this a thing you've seen other communities do or try and have success with enforcing?
WordPress is extraordinarily unique in the open source world. So, you know, the fact that we have grown so much, there's been so many successful businesses created without the license changing, or any of the bad stuff that normally happens to commercially successful open source projects.
Many would argue this is the bad thing starting to happen.
In 21 years, I've never had a problem like this with another host. I don't expect it with, I don't expect it with anyone else. And you ask, like, what about these other people? I've emailed with the other CEOs. I have good relationships. I am not aware of anything else as egregious. If you want to send me some examples, I'm happy to check it out. But like,
what is the egregious nature? Because it seems like there's a couple different things floating around here. There is the confusion of WP Engine users and thinking it is part of like WordPress and it's not. There is the amount of money that they are making relative to the amount of time they are contributing. And there is the expectation of them paying this 8% trademark fee.
Yeah. So, and what's a moral issue versus a legal issue?
Yeah.
So I think the contributing it's a moral issue, right? So you're right. There's no law that says this. There's nothing.
Yes.
The legal issue is the trademark, and it's the WordPress trademark and the WooCommerce trademark, which, by the way, belongs 100% to Automatic.
So the thing that people feel is that your strict enforcement of the moral argument is being done through this more legal argument. It's almost like it almost feels a bit retaliatory. I actually really felt that when I was watching the interview with Primogen, where it felt like I have the exact quote actually that I put in my notes if I can find it really quick. It was
Yes. I mean, this is my life's work.
Yep.
They're a private equity firm. They bought into this a few years ago. They're going to be out in a few years. This is what I'm doing the rest of my life.
So the exact quote was, "There's a law about trademark. So that is the law that we are using to ask them to give back." Is that a fair representation of your stance on this?
Was it Al Capone who went to jail for tax evasion? Sometimes you have to use the laws available to you to get someone for their bad behavior.
So the concern people have is that the law you are using here could also be used to hurt a lot of players that we would both agree are absolutely, without any question, good faith players in the space. The violations you are going after them for are things that a lot of other companies are likely more or less egregiously doing. I've seen plenty that are more, plenty that are less. But there's a lot of places the WordPress name comes up that are not officially WordPress. Oh, Kat wanted to come say hi.
Hello. Is this Miles? Or?
This is Murphy.
Murphy. Hi, Murphy.
Yes.
Sorry, I got a little distracted there.
No worries.
You said earlier about
Yes.
trademark law.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't defend it, you lose it.
But for 21 years, have you had to defend it before?
Yes.
Oh.
And the other thing is what people might not know about trademark law. It's kind of the legal threshold for confusion is 15%. So that's just 1 in 6. It's not saying everyone confuses WordPress engine,
Yes.
WP engine. It's 1 in 6.
Yeah.
We did, part of why we feel like we have a really strong legal case is they did like a survey, a panel and stuff like that. We found 27% of people were confused.
Interesting. So if they were paying the license, or if they were paying the trademark fee, would the confusion be okay?
Yeah, they'd be paying for it.
Okay.
So, and there's other hosts. I mentioned Newfold Digital, which is a large, by the way, private equity owned
Yes.
company. They have a trademark deal. So there are precedents for this in the market. And I hope to do more of these in the future. So yes, would I like to do more of these? Absolutely.
So
We'll use it to fund more WordPress.
to be
Make
very clear,
WordPress
just to
better.
draw this line, the confusion is okay if they are paying for the trademark, and the random support requests you get, the people who are confused, like your mother, that see WP Engine and assume that is an official WordPress thing, that becomes okay by paying for the trademark.
I don't know if I'd agree with the phrasing, the confusion is okay.
Yeah.
That they would have the right to use their trademark in a commercial way if they were paying for it. So that's all we're asking is for a commercial license. There's lots of ways they can use the WordPress trademark, and many people do, like WP GraphQL, totally fine with. I don't think that's confusing to customers or anything. Anyway, I did the example on their homepage, and anyone can do this. So go to WPEngine.com.
Yes.
By the way, please visit their page. Do Command F.
For WordPress, yep.
Search for WordPress. How many times does it come
I think
up?
it was like over 16.
56.
56 on the homepage?
Yeah, 56 on the homepage, or at least when I did it earlier today. Search for engine, right? So what's the biggest part of their brand name? It's the WP engine,
Okay.
right? It's the
I'm
engine
getting
part.
31 and 26 for engine.
They might have changed it. They've been. By the way,
I can archive.org it.
they've been changing their webpage a ton. Let me see why. Because you're also using, is that Safari?
No, I'm using Arc.
Arc.
Yep. I'm going to go back to June, which I think is relatively safe.
Well, let me just show you what I did so you can see it.
Cool. Just quickly
So
confirming.
the numbers when I did it.
Others are getting 56. Interesting. Okay.
Okay, look. I just got 56.
Yep.
Take a look at this.
Others are saying 56 in chat. So,
Yeah.
yep. Checks out. I don't know why it was. It might have been because I was on a smaller screen size. I zoom in everything a ton on my computer.
An engine. So it was 14 this morning. Right now I'm getting 26. So, but
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah.
So when it was 14, I made the point that it was 4x. So they're
So-
mentioning WordPress 4 times more than engine on their site. And look at this. We power the freedom to create on WordPress. Most
Yes.
trusted WordPress hosting.
So
Most trusted WordPress platform. By the way, they even have a plan name called Core WordPress.
Yes.
How confusing is that? Like they're selling Core WordPress. to
I don't
people.
think that's that confusing. It's if the platform is a WordPress host and they call something core WordPress, I personally don't find that confusing. Like when I come from the video
Well,
game
you're
host
part
world.
of the pretty smart, probably 85%.
When
that's
I
not
was
confused.
15 years old and I was buying server hosts for Minecraft, when I bought the Minecraft core there's literally a plane called Core Minecraft. I specifically remember. I'm trying to remember what host it was on, but I never in my wildest dreams thought that this was an official thing that was being run by Mojang. I personally find this argument really strange. That said, we have a whole live audience here. I'm down to poll them quick because I'm curious what the general audience feels.
Well, particularly people in the WordPress community. So in WordPress, we talk about core WordPress as kind of the core open source software a lot. So, but yeah, let's see the poll. This is kind of fun. I like that we're doing this live, by the way. Thank you.
Of course, happy to do this live and have people and their thoughts.
And thank you to Murphy for coming and comforting me.
Yes, and buddy, worst possible positioning, my guy. You just pulled focus. Murphy.
that's amazing.
Hopefully it refocuses. Yeah, it's refocusing on at least on you.
That's hilarious. Thanks, Murphy.
People are saying the core WordPress plan name is confusing. You got 60% saying it's confusing. Cool. So
well.
I'll cave on that point. Happy to do a poll and see how they feel. I personally didn't find it confusing, but yeah, teach their own. That said, this does lead us into, we're finally getting to my second question here, which is regarding the many hosts that support WordPress. Something that feels particularly weird here. We can agree that there are businesses that are making more money hosting WordPress servers than WP Engine. Like GoDaddy probably makes more money off of WordPress customers.
If I had a guess, they are right now the biggest in the world.
So from my numbers researching,
because GoDaddy, I think, has more sites, but they charge a lot less per customer.
they made $3.8 billion in 2021.
Yeah.
If we're going by the internet split averages, 43% of websites are WordPress, if I recall. Around that, 40 to 50.
Yeah.
Assuming 30% of that number, it's still twice the amount of money that WP Engine is making.
I mean, GoDaddy is public, so we can actually look this up.
Yes.
My understanding is they host they register like tens of millions of domains. They're
Yes.
the largest domain registrar in the world, so they have a huge business there, huge SSL business. They do a lot of non-WordPress hosting, so they have like a website builder
Yes.
and e-commerce and everything like that. So I don't know if they break out publicly how much they make from hosting, but let's just say just take their hosting cost, and then you could probably apply a 43% to that.
I'll reword it. Would you be surprised if GoDaddy was making as much, if not more, off of WordPress customers than WP Engine was?
So the funny thing is we have had beef with GoDaddy in the past. When Lee Whitlinger was on their board.
Noticing some themes.
We have now come to I think a good relationship with GoDaddy. In fact, I emailed their whole exec team yesterday. A very nice email saying like, "Hey, we're good." I don't want them to get freaked out. So,
Okay.
so yes, do they make a lot? Yes. Do they give back more than WP Engine? Yes. Are they doing anything that's as confusing with the trademark? Not to my knowledge. I've never gotten any support emails about GoDaddy. So
this is
my mom doesn't think GoDaddy is us. So GoDaddy is a pretty unique brand.
Time for the sinker and the hook, line, and sinker. Is it fair to say that WP Engine is being penalized for betting on WordPress more heavily than the other providers that we're talking about?
I don't know if I agree with that framing. Yeah. So are they being penalized for
focusing their efforts on WordPress instead of other solutions?
Well, to be clear, from a legal point of view,
Yep.
they're being penalized for violating the trademark. So that is where I believe our legal standing is.
Yes, but we already had the quote from before of you using the law as a method of enforcing what you believe to be like unfair things that they are doing. And on top of that, a lot of the same trademark violations could be issued against a company like GoDaddy. And this is one of the first, if not the first times this is being enforced in this way. It is absolutely retaliatory. And
So in 21 years,
yes.
How do you want to know how every other enforcement has gone? It's a conversation. It's a single email. It's a picking up the phone. People change what they do or they do a deal. This is the only time I'm aware of. No, we've done other cease and desist. So I will say we have taken other things down. We actually just did a pretty successful one against, is it called Festinger? Do you know about this?
No.
Oh, it's pretty. There was a site that what they did is they took every single WordPress plugin in the world and all the pro versions, and they nulled them. And they were just selling it all for like $200 a year. You could get like every single pro version in the world. And again, not illegal. So legal under the GPL, but they weren't changing the names. So they were selling their customers pro plugins with the licensing stuff nulled out. So we were able to use the trademark basically to shut them down. So that just happened in the last few weeks, I think. So that's another example. Yeah.
So there has never been an instance of how do I put it?
This is the first C&D I think we published.
Yes.
And if you read the C&D, it says exactly what our claims are. So, you know, by the way, they haven't filed a lawsuit. Their C&D was basically like censorship. They're like, stop saying mean things about me and take all your posts and tweets down, which is kind of lame. Ours says you're
Yes.
violating our trademark. So these haven't yet become lawsuits or legal cases, but they have done the preservation request and everything, which is a huge pain in the butt if you're familiar with all that. So
Yeah. I will say that of all of the cease and desists I've had to file, which I've had to do, most of them are not a trademark violation. They are egregious things like if they are perceiving this as an unfair attack on them, which I can understand why they would, filing a C&D to emphasize that we are covering our tracks and plan to potentially enforce like our legal right to defend ourselves and protect ourselves from potential damages from these misleading claims. That is absolutely a thing that exists in the world. I understand that it is not as clear cut as a trademark violation case, but you can absolutely file a valid cease and desist that is because somebody is saying egregious things about you and your business. That is totally fair, fine, and how the legal system works in the United States.
And there's free speech laws as well,
Yes.
First Amendment. So if they believe anything I have said or published publicly is not under my First Amendment rights, please sue me. Make a lawsuit. They haven't. So do that.
Yeah. But the first step is to do something like a cease and desist, because ideally you would stop, they would pay, everything's done. But that is, from some of the texts that they received, I can understand why they would feel as though you are choosing to damage their reputation as part of a business negotiation practice. And that is absolutely something that can go to court.
Then they should, you know. And they're, again, Silver Lake is $102 billion under management.
Yes.
They're very familiar with using legal bullying against people, which they're attempting to do against me. I am glad to be, you know, fortunate with Automatic and other things to be able to defend against this. And so I'm fighting them. Yeah. I'm sure, you know, if Automatic wasn't as good a business or something, we just crumple under this. That's what they do. They bully.
So to go back to the point I was trying to make with the focusing in on WordPress, there's a lot of companies that focus in on technologies around them in the space. Like I have a thing called Upload Thing, which is a better way to do file uploads and like object or storage management stuff for people who agree S3 is egregious and obnoxious. And we, like, our whole branding was the best file uploader for Next.js. And it launched the same day that Vercel launched Vercel Blob, which was their storage product. And we had more NPM installs for quite a while. We were winning for a bit. And this actually strengthened our relationship with Vercel. And despite like using the Next.js trademark all over our products, that has done nothing but build a stronger relationship between us, because it is seen as us promoting Next.js as much as it is seen as us being part of the Next.js ecosystem. And
this is a great example of trademark law. So best uploader for Next.js. I'm not a lawyer, but I think that's fair. If you called it Next.js uploader, that would probably not be fair.
There's a plugin named NextAuth that makes a lot of money in sponsorships from companies that are competing with Vercel in many ways that they've never cared about. There's a lot of other plugins like NextUI, which is a company that is taking a lot of investment money and growing very quickly right now. Nobody cares.
So that's up to the trademark holder. Like I don't own the Next trademark.
Yes.
So
can we agree that it is unusual in the open source space for things that are published on GitHub, open source licensed, even if they are 30% plus of the company's money is spent on like furthering this thing, that it is incredibly unusual and unexpected in the open source space for enforcement like this to occur. Enforcement like what you were describing earlier with the pro plugins absolutely makes sense. That I can fully get behind. But this type of enforcement as a method to take a percentage of a business's revenue for using your open source tool is unheard
for using
of.
the trademark. Not for using the open source tool. They're free to run WordPress. It's all in the GPL license.
Yes.
So we're not saying they can't run WordPress. They can host by the way, they can host their own copy of WordPress.org. Everything on there is GPL.
But we agreed that if they were contributing enough to WordPress, like the repos on GitHub, that you wouldn't be trying to enforce this trademark.
By the way, I don't have to offer them that option.
I know. But
so I could have just said, you have to pay us or else.
Yeah.
So I gave them the option. I don't know, because I'm nice or because I believe in open source, but like I don't have to do that.
Yeah.
They are violating the commercial trademark. That's the only thing.
And I think we got a straight answer. Is there any other company paying the 8% of their revenue fee? for the trademark right now.
This is all covered by NDAs and stuff. But
Okay.
there are other companies.
Whether or not there is a company that is paying 8% of their revenue is not NDA'd. The existence of a company or more that is doing that should not reasonably be covered under an NDA that I've ever read.
So if that's what you're trying to box me into saying, no, there is no one else paying 8%.
Okay.
So yes. Are there other people paying things I think are fair?
Yes.
Yes. So.
And also, to be fair, WP Engine may have negotiated the rate down to something that you could have mutually agreed to. Would you have been potentially down via negotiations to lower the rate?
Totally.
Yes. Okay. So both sides, whatever. I do think it is fair to note that there is no other company paying 8% of their revenue to WordPress for a trademark license.
And you know what's funny now is they can sign, by the way, they can make this all go away by doing a license. Interesting question is whether now, after all the terrible stuff they said about me, smearing my name, the sort of dark PR tactics they're doing, maybe more than 8% is what we'd agree to now.
Stop digging, man. I'm trying to help you make things clear and dig out, and we need to stop going deeper.
I'm not digging. They have taken my life's work. I've spent 21 years on WordPress. I plan to spend the rest of my life on it. They've come in, private equity. They've screwed up our community. They've taken revenue. They give nothing back. So I feel strongly about this. It's true. I'm getting worked up now.
I will say specifically that we've described instances where the general community is benefiting from WP Engine at the very least through WP GraphQL. I didn't take the time to look into more examples because I figured having one concrete example to push back on the they contribute nothing thing was enough. I
never said nothing. I said 40 hours, and now under Theo standard, it's 120 hours.
So you just said contributing nothing. It might have been just speaking, saying it quick, but you did literally just say they contribute nothing to the community.
Okay, so let me correct that then.
Okay.
So contributing very little.
Okay.
120 hours per week under Theo standard.
Okay.
40 hours a week under the WordPress.org standard.
Okay. So the other thing.
Thank you for correcting me. Yes.
I want to go down the private equity path, but I want to finish up the contribution path with one more point that I consider important, which is there a point at which there are enough people contributing to WordPress open source projects that are part of the WordPress community repos and whatnot, where more people contributing would hurt, the too many cooks in the kitchen?
Oh, that's a good question. Before I answer it, I do want to say thank you for calling me out.
Of course. No, I
appreciate you're holding me to a high standard. Yes. I deserve it. And I also want to say that I'm open to changing my mind when things are being pointed out. Or if your poll said no one thinks core WordPress is confusing, I'd have to update my priors. So I'm open to changing my mind.
Yeah. And I am too. That's why I did the poll. 'Cause it's I have this thing that I pretty strongly believed that others wouldn't agree with, and I was wrong. I'm going to stop pushing that point. But yeah.
Okay, so your question was,
is there a point at which more contributions to WordPress would no longer be benefiting WordPress directly or the community, and potentially could even hurt? The too many cooks in the kitchen problem.
I mean, yes, potentially, but I will say there is so much to do, because you can, by the way, it's not just code. You can contribute translations, organizing WordCamps, meetups, marketing. We allow a whole variety. Support forums, helping users in our free forums, all these things, they all count for Five for the Future. So we try to make it so anyone, whether they can code or not, can really be involved in the community. So,
would it be fair to add external open source projects that benefit all WordPress users to that definition of contributions?
And let me clarify here, because I think people get worked up when I talk about the Five for the Future contribution versus general contributions.
Yes.
So I would say literally everyone who uses WordPress or tells their friend about it is contributing in some way.
Yes.
Right? If you just have a WordPress site and you tell your friend, hey, I like WordPress, awesome. You just contributed. So I personally have a very, very broad view.
So would it be fair to say
that's not the Five for the Future definition.
Okay.
So perhaps I should distinguish better in my speech. The Five for the Future sort of counted contribution, the WordPress.org standard, versus I actually think anyone, like I said, super broad.
So would betting your $1 billion business entirely on WordPress, pushing it as hard as you can and making it, in your opinion, the best, assuming they believe their platform is the best way to host WordPress, which I think it's fair to say they probably believe, that at the very least in their minds, they are contributing to WordPress in the general sense that you're describing. The same way like me telling a friend to use WordPress, them betting their whole business on it is a contribution to the ecosystem.
Well, obviously, my opinion is there are better places to host WordPress that are cheaper.
Yes.
So that's my opinion. Two, I will say that if you want me to give them credit, sure, I'll give them credit.
Yes.
So they have gotten 1.5 million websites to pay them to host WordPress. Awesome. Like, kudos.
Can we agree that there is some percentage within there that may not have ended up using WordPress if it wasn't for WP Engine? It's hard to say how much it is, but that there's like, I don't know, like at least 50,000 people that would be slightly less likely to have been on WordPress if WP Engine wasn't one of the companies that existed pushing WordPress further.
I will say it is more than zero. However, I will say there are literally hundreds of other places to get WordPress. And the reason all the
But none of them are making their whole bet in branding around WordPress, where another host like GoDaddy has less incentive and does less to push WordPress to its users than WP Engine does. And WP Engine is spending money on marketing, spending money on press, spending money on all of these things to...
So does GoDaddy. So
Yeah,
do
but-
Bluehost and everything. So like, let's look at the homepage of some of these others.
Yes.
They have WordPress usually in the navigation. They promote it. They do that because it helps them get more customers, not because...
Do you disagree that having WordPress as like the theming for your homepage is a bigger confidence builder, that it's saying more like we are betting our business on this because we think it is great?
So someone else who bets their business on it is WordPress, is Bluehost.
Yeah,
By the way,
okay.
let's look at the Bluehost website. Everyone open bluehost.com. By the way, this is an example of someone who I think is an awesome host. That's not, I don't own them, right? So it says WordPress web hosting domains. The first navigation item menu is WordPress.
Yep.
They have a commercial license, so they can call it WordPress hosting. It says they have the logo. It says recommended. It says WordPress website creation
So-
easy. So they are betting their company as well on WordPress.
Yeah, but they're also paying the commercial fee, which I think negates the point. Let's say they weren't paying the commercial fee. They got rid of the recommended by. Would this be...
If they weren't paying the commercial fee, I would definitely get in touch with them about this logo, that, this, that. Yeah, totally.
Okay, so
yeah.
so to make the point I'm trying to make here, you don't count this as promotion until they're paying the fee.
So they're using the WordPress logo and trademark
Yes.
in a very commercial way here. So if I came across this and they had no commercial license, yes, I would get in touch with them.
So
I wouldn't send a C&D. I would call them up. I would talk
the
to their...
specific reason I'm saying like this is irrelevant to the thing I'm trying to bring up right now is
Okay.
I'm trying to point out that even if they weren't paying the trademark, and WP Engine, who's not paying the trademark, that having a website pushing WordPress this hard is a net benefit to the community.
So to give an example,
Yes.
if you hover over the WordPress thing here,
Yes.
it says WordPress hosting. So they could call that Blue hosting with WordPress, but they're calling it WordPress hosting
Yeah.
Um,
But
in a way that's very, I think,
Yeah.
under trademark law,
So-
this is what would count. But this is also true.
Yeah, so-
if they disagreed, we could go to court and a judge could decide.
We have to. So there's two different points here we have to agree on. The first is that a website that is a hosting site that is promoting WordPress as its main offering on its homepage, is that promoting WordPress? Is that in any way similar to when I tell a friend, hey, you should use WordPress? Is having your business bet on it in that way, not just it's an option in the nav, but your homepage is, we like WordPress, we're a WordPress host.
So, and maybe we agree to disagree here.
Yeah.
My opinion is that they are doing it because they will get more customers because people are looking for a WordPress host. That's
But
why
people are looking for
if-
hosts for a lot of things.
By
So
the way, Google WordPress hosting and look at all the ads.
Yeah.
People are spending probably over 100 million a year advertising on
Yeah.
the keywords WordPress hosting. Why do they do that?
because they want to be able to spend their life working on a thing they care about, which I think in this case is
No,
WordPress.
They do it because they get more customers.
But
the companies. For,
yes,
for
but there's
like
a lot
volunteers,
of
sure.
yeah, there's lots of things that host, or there's lots of different things you can host in lots of places. Would they not theoretically be able to make more money if they also supported Drupal?
So yes, they could put Drupal on their homepage.
Yeah.
They could put Joomla on their homepage. They could. They put WordPress because it gets some more customers.
But if they put WordPress and Drupal, would they lose a lot of WordPress customers?
No, like Pantheon,
So-
for example. Pantheon's an example that does
Yes.
both WordPress and Drupal. They actually used to be exclusively a Drupal shop.
Yep.
They've now shifted So I haven't looked at their homepage recently,
Yeah.
but
But
let's
the
pull it up.
specific point I'm trying to make here, you don't need to pull up the page because like I think the point I'm trying to make is clear, and if chat can help me clarify on this, am I being clear or not? Chat, let me know if I'm being unclear, because I feel like I've been very clear with this. That a company choosing to bet 100% on WordPress is in a way promoting WordPress, and if they are not putting other options in, some amount of that is that they don't want the other options. They want to support and be part of WordPress because they like WordPress. I think that is a fair thing to say.
I think this is a good example. Pantheon, so pantheon.io. People want to check it out for another web host.
Yes.
That supports multiple platforms. They started as exclusively Drupal.
Experience. Yeah, it supports governance for WordPress, Drupal, and Next. Yeah.
And if you look down here, they've got logos for
All three. Yeah. Are they paying the commercial license fee?
they do not have a commercial license. No.
Okay. But are you okay with them using the logo because it's being used alongside other logos, which makes it clear that it is not just like this is not associated with WordPress?
I am not a lawyer.
Okay.
So I would ask my lawyers.
No, this
but
is
if
how
you
you
had
feel.
to ask me on the fly, I think this is fine.
Okay. So
But I don't want to be legally held to that.
So the 2 points I want to talk about here is if there was just the WordPress logo, is that in support of WordPress? And does adding the other logos not? I really focused on the first one. So if it was just the WordPress logo instead of these other two, and if we scroll back up to the top of the page, and it wasn't WordPress, Drupal, and Next, it was just WordPress, does that not indicate that they are more interested in WordPress than other platforms?
So what I would do, because we have some of the top lawyers in the world, I would go to them.
I'm also going to close this so it's not.
Okay. So I would go to them and say, hey, is this a violation or not?
Yeah. Okay.
Because, I have my opinions, whatever. I'm not a lawyer.
Yeah, but
we pay lots of
to
lawyers.
be clear, this isn't about the legal. This is about your opinions, and we're trying to understand how you think about these things.
But my opinions don't matter legally. So I went to lawyers and said, is what WP Engine doing wrong? And they said yes.
Would they
So,
not say the same with Pantheon there?
I can ask them if you'd like me to.
I would actually.
Okay.
Not like right now or any time soon, but the point I'm trying to make is the use of the WordPress name and logo is likely in violation in a lot of places.
Okay, so as a follow-up,
yes,
I will ask our lawyers whether what Pantheon is doing on their homepage is they would consider worth doing a C&D.
not worth doing if it meets the definition of a trademark violation.
Sure. Okay, I'll ask them. We could also run the panel, or do a survey. Why don't you do a survey? Why don't you ask the people?
Yeah, ask the people.
Do another poll.
What is the question?
Is Pantheon's confusing?
This is about confusion. This is about supporting the ecosystem right now. So
No. The question is whether confusion in the marketplace. Remember the 15% threshold. So let's see if 15% of people think Pantheon is 15% or more is looks like they're officially associated with the WordPress trademark. Why don't we just ask it? Or how do you want to phrase it?
Because I always think that that's not what this is about.
Why don't we ask about WP Engine? Let's do a poll there. Because they're loading
So the point I'm trying to make is very focused in on this idea that a host that is focusing on one framework or platform is supporting that one. That is a method of support. Instead of it being a company, let's say a developer. If I was to say on my Twitter page that I am a Next.js, Remix, SvelteKit, and Gatsby developer, or I was to say I'm a Next.js developer, just the Next.js, which of those is promoting Next.js more?
Theo, our legal case is about the trademark. It's not about them supporting or not. So all I'm talking about is a trademark violation.
It seems like what I'm talking about has nothing to do with the legal stuff. I am purely talking in terms of things that WP Engine is doing to contribute to WordPress. That betting on WordPress is a method of contribution. The same way me putting WordPress developer in my bio on Twitter is a bigger contribution to WordPress than me saying WordPress, React, Next.js, Gatsby.
I already gave them kudos and I already said thank you. By the way, thank you WP Engine for all that. So.
Yes. Okay, but I just want to push back on this idea that they aren't contributing because there's a lot of types of contribution, and it's hard for me to believe that WP Engine doesn't like WordPress and runs a business exclusively focused on it. Like if I was at WP Engine and I didn't like WordPress, I'd be pushing for them to add Drupal and Next and all these other things.
Cool.
But it seems like they like it. It seems like they're betting their entire business and livelihoods on it. And I would make the argument that in some ways it feels as though they're being punished for not supporting other platforms as well.
They are being punished for the trademark violation.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah, okay.
That's all we're doing legally. So, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, WP.
We've hit the wall on that one. I'm happy to move to the next one.
Why don't we do the poll, though? I'm kind of curious, like, what your people think. We can do two, maybe. One for Pantheon, one for WP Engine.
So somebody asked the question, who benefits more, WP Engine from WordPress or WordPress from WP Engine? I'm not going to sit here and pretend that WP Engine isn't benefiting more from WordPress. Like that we don't need to pull it. That's obvious. I will absolutely concede that point. The reason I would do polls is to address potential confusion in a thing that we don't agree on. And the poll I would like to do is, can we agree that WordPress Engine is contributing in some meaningful amount?
Look what you just did.
Because you use WP to abbreviate WordPess, we're hopping between the two. That's I have.
By the way, they do this too.
How awesome is it that I made it that long without doing that?
Their executives do this. They have it on their page. We have so many examples where on their website they said WordPress Engine. So like,
okay,
yeah,
that understandable mishap. So technically speaking, when I say JavaScript instead of JS, I'm violating Oracle trademarks. So these things happen.
Really?
Yes, that is a thing, and there's actually a whole movement right now to get Oracle to drop the JavaScript trademark.
I didn't know that.
Hashtag free JavaScript is a whole thing. I just did a video on it. Ryan Dahl, the creator of Node.js and Dino, is the one pushing it.
Huh.
And the thing they don't comment on that I think is a potential issue for it, to quickly TLDR it, is that JavaScript being like Creative Commons, open licensed, like the term being public domain, could potentially hurt the Java trademark. Huh. And that is an important thing to consider that isn't included in this movement, which I think is important enough to call out, that any potential risk to the Java trademark is something that Oracle should reasonably be concerned about. But them owning and operating the JavaScript trademark when they literally do not use it for a single thing they're not using the trademark. It should be forced out. But that's a whole thing. And legally speaking, you cannot have a JavaScript conference. People have been sued for trying. Somebody got sued for doing they did a course that was Rust for JavaScript developers.
Okay.
And Oracle tried suing them for it.
Huh.
So
it's trademark owners can be very aggressive. So
yes.
Today I learned, thank you. And like I said, I had never heard of your channel before yesterday.
No worries.
So I think I'm going to follow now because I'm learning stuff from you. So thank you.
This is what I'm here for, is nerding out about these deep detail things. But how do I want to put this? Oh, apparently Chipotle is, if you want to do a Taco Bell versus Chipotle poll, shut up, guys. I need to stop paying attention to y'all. There was another direction I really wanted to go in regarding the state of this. Silver Lake. We need to talk about them.
Well, I actually, do you mind if I use the restroom?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Take your time.
Do you want to put up a poll?
I'll talk about chat. We'll come up with a good poll when you're doing that. Yeah. Take your time. Chat is having fun. Okay, somebody on YouTube chat said that my framing of the betting on WordPress is unfair because you can't say you're betting on Nintendo by having a website for hosting a Nintendo emulator. Yeah, but if I had a Nintendo emulator that was illegal, a PlayStation emulator that was illegal, an Xbox emulator that was illegal, it's still just as illegal. So it's not a fair comparison because, as we just described, a website that has the WordPress trademark next to Drupal and Next.js was fine, but one that was just WordPress is not. So that was no. I'm VIPing Deej. He just got hit with a chat thing because he did I'm not a lawyer, and it was upset with one of the 4-letter parts of that. The Pantheon poll? The Pantheon poll's like, Pantheon's obviously not associated with WordPress. Anybody who would vote yes on that would upset me. This is my home. I've used it in a bunch of my ads. Watch more of my videos. Oh, somebody did a $5 super chat making sure Matt's not planting anything in my bathroom. Don't worry, Matt and I are homies. We've had a bunch of really good conversations before and we'll continue to. I hope this doesn't hurt our friendship, but yeah, I just think these things are important to talk about. So we ended up running a poll. Everybody was asking for really dumb things that we can all agree would be dumb questions.
Oh, can we ask about the WP engine, WordPress engine confusion?
Yeah, I'm gonna do that poll.
How do you want to phrase that?
So could be confused is one thing, but there's a lot of other things like I mentioned before with like NextAuth, with NextUI, where people could reasonably confuse it. So, and I agree, it's reasonably easy to confuse those things if you're just hearing about WordPress engine and even going to their website. I could see why someone might be confused, but I feel like the website itself doesn't make it that confusing. I'm down for that. How about, is the WP engine website, does the WP engine website seem to indicate that they are an official part of WordPress or the owners of WordPress?
So yeah, how do we phrase this?
I think
so
does the WP engine website
WPengine.com.
look like it is operated by the people who own and operate WordPress?
That's a little strong. Does it feel like an official thing?
Yes. Does it feel like an official part of WordPress?
That's fair.
Cool.
So if you want to phrase it like that, that's
Does
fair.
the WP engine website make it look...
WPengine.com. So go to WPengine.com.
Engine web.
We're going to get them so much
like
traffic. This is probably the most traffic they've gotten in a long time.
WordPress.
So how'd you phrase it?
No, not sure. As best I could, fitting it into the tiny window you get for the poll. So does the WP Engine web look like official WordPress? Question mark. Is the best I could fit in the tiny window here.
And then it's yes or no?
Yes, no, and not sure.
I'm so curious what this is going to be.
Yeah.
So again, threshold 15%. And the way the lawyers do this is they get like a panel and there's a whole legal way to do it. It's not a poll like this, but they try to get statistically random distribution of like the population. So how long did the poll
All of
stay
you are
open?
commenting. The poll stays for 2 minutes. All of you are saying the most trusted WordPress platform is the quote that they are focusing on.
Huh.
58% are saying, yes, it looks like official WordPress thus far.
Wow. That's way higher.
Yeah, higher than I would have expected. It's so clearly WordPress hosting and creating on WordPress, not part of WordPress, in my opinion, from chat.
By the way, that's fine.
Yeah.
Again,
What is official WordPress is a good question.
The threshold's 15%. So again,
Yeah.
the majority can think it's totally separate or whatever. The threshold's 1 in 6.
Okay. How long would you say this has been a problem for? Like, how long has WP Engine met that threshold?
Oh, that's a good question. This is a legal thing.
Of course.
So I don't know if I want to tie myself to anything.
Of course.
I'm not dodging the question.
Of course. For the legal reason, I can understand. But do you feel like through the majority of WP Engine's operation that this threshold is reasonably assumed to have been met?
So I'll say a few things.
Okay.
Things changed when Silver Lake bought them in 2018.
Okay.
So that's when things started to get a lot more aggressive. Earlier than that, I think they were doing some really cool stuff. They bought Flywheel. They kind of, some people say, made it worse. Now, people pointed out, like, hey, last year you spoke at their conference. So I will say that I've been trying really hard to, show them goodwill. I spoke at their commercial conference. It wasn't like a WordCamp. It was like their commercial promotional thing. And I went there and spent an hour doing an interview. That's like, obviously,
Yeah.
I was really trying to extend the olive branch, really try to bring them into the fold. And I will say, I feel very led on that they were going to do something. So again, for many, many months, they've been indicating, we'll do a deal, we'll do a deal, we'll do a deal. So, and they've had numerous proposals and opportunities. Again, this one pager we sent them on Friday was meant to be super simple and something that even if they had just verbally been like, sure, let's talk about it, but they didn't. And so that's why we gave them the option. I was like, okay, you just want to like engage some way. But they literally wouldn't even take my call. So I was calling them. They spoke to my CFO, Mark, but they didn't speak to me. So
Yeah. So
how's the poll doing, by the way?
the poll, it was yes, about 50%.
What was the last
About
number?
41% was no, and then 8% was not sure. But a bit over 50%.
Wow.
Yeah. I can see why you would have concerns there. That is reasonable.
Do we want to do Pantheon? See like if anyone's confused by Pantheon?
No one will be confused by Pantheon.
Well, let's just see. Let's see what their percent is. Like, because you asked me, you said, why aren't you going after
I don't want to have to be
Pantheon?
monitoring a poll while I'm doing this.
No, but you asked me why I'm not going after Pantheon.
No,
so let's see why I'm not going after Pantheon.
Because it's near zero. That's why.
But let's see the people.
Like, we also
Vox
agreed.
Populi.
We also agreed earlier that we're doing this. You brought up Al Capone as an example where they went after him for tax laws, even though that was not the thing that was most problematic that he did. And I think that's a very important example to illustrate that this is in some amount a retaliatory effort, that the goal here is to make them, in your minds, a better contributor to the WordPress ecosystem.
I have tried for many years the carrot.
Yes.
I am now trying a stick. That is fair to say.
Yes. Would it be in any way fair to say that the stick felt sudden and harsh to them?
To people from the outside, yes.
Okay.
To Heather or Lee, no.
Okay. And I will say, for what it is worth, I have tried reaching out to Heather and Lee, and they have, for many reasons I would prefer to not discuss, many vary in validity, have not been interested in doing a conversation with me. I understand. I am disappointed. It'd be nice to get more information from all sides here, but I don't think that excuses the level at which this escalated and the potential damage to the WordPress community through the way that these things have been escalated and enforced. That it'd be reasonable for others, like you even said yourself that you emailed GoDaddy yesterday to let them know they have nothing to worry about.
I didn't say that, but I said I think we're good.
Yeah, but the point being, you can see why others would be concerned about the state of WordPress as a result of this.
Okay, a few things there. Well, one, a question for you.
Yes.
If Heather or Lee wanted to come on,
absolutely. Yeah, at the very least, I would do the call with them. I don't know if it would be fun enough to do a live stream and a video about, because it's depends what we have to talk about and how much they're going to restrict what I'm allowed to ask about, because you haven't given me any restrictions at all or any planning of I cannot ask or talk about these things. You've given me a little bit of info in the past that that was not under or on the record that I'm not able to share that is important context. I wish I could, but none of it is important enough to change the direction of this conversation or the understanding people have externally. But if they were to say, we can't talk about these 5 things, I would say, okay, then we can't talk. And you've done nothing like that for me.
Lee, again, managing director or whatever his title is of a $102 billion firm.
Yes.
And by the way, he's the decision maker.
Yeah.
So this is even above. I think one of the things that I felt led on by is I think Heather and many WP Engine employees want to do a deal. They want to contribute more. And I've actually had whistleblowers inside WP Engine tell me that. A lot of my info has come from inside their company.
Yeah.
But ultimately, they kept saying the board won't approve this. The board would approve this. That's why we escalated. I was like, okay, who's your board? Okay, this guy Lee's in charge. He controls the whole thing. They own the company. So that's why we escalated it to him. So he's the person that should come on. He's the decision maker ultimately. He could say yes to this tomorrow, or he could say no, which he has.
Had at any point you publicly communicated that you were upset with WP Engine and their use of the trademark before everything exploded at WordPress or at a WordCamp?
Quite the opposite.
Okay.
I've done everything to be very positive about them. I spoke at their conference. I've said positive things about them in the past. So I've been extremely positive publicly.
So this is actually what I think is part of the problem is optically, publicly, this was very sudden. And even internally, privately, the switch was very sudden. If I was in your position, I had all the same beliefs, all the same feelings that you had. My approach would have been to start with the escalation, but not as rapidly as you did. Suddenly saying, same day, days after you had been positive towards them, WP Engine is a cancer on the community. That was a massive jump in escalation. And anytime there's a vibe at a certain level and you escalate it somewhere else that quickly, it will be perceived terribly and damage the community that it happened in. These 0 to 100 type things do a lot of damage, and it's important to warm people up to these ideas. So personally, I would have been much lighter and started hinting at things publicly, like there are a couple players in the space that I feel like aren't contributing enough, and it'd be nice to see more contributions from a few of them. And then text them like, hey, by the way, I was hinting at this. I really think we should have a talk soon. But like part of the carrot is the public like mentioning of these things and making them realize that this can happen, rather than suddenly going guns blazing out like you did publicly.
I wonder how I can explain my point of view there. So as an example, though, they were a top sponsor at WordCamp. So we allowed them, other people want to sponsor, by the way.
Yes.
We allowed them to have this sort of honored position.
But also they paid money to the WordPress Foundation for that position.
No, but we have to choose the top sponsors because there's more people who want to be a top sponsor than we have slots. We only have 4 slots.
Can you raise the price?
We don't need to for the conference, so we don't need more money. We just run them at break even. So, but yes, there are more than 4 people that would love to have that top
That's
spot.
actually, that's a really important point, is that I don't agree that isn't a meaningful method of contribution, but I could see with the perspective, I don't think anyone knew this before, I certainly didn't know this before, that the for-profit WordCamp subsidiary of the WordPress Foundation, nonprofit, despite being a for-profit, specifically runs the conferences at break even. And as such, they're not going to raise the prices for sponsors to make more money, because that money would not make it back to the WordPress Foundation. And as such, I can understand why you specifically would not see that as a meaningful contribution to WordPress to sponsor WordCamp.
That is fair to say, yes.
That is like 5 layers of nuance nobody could possibly have known. And even then, I think it's very reasonable. And I'll do the poll. I'm going to do a poll now for this. Does WP Engine, or is sponsoring WordCamp a type of contribution?
It is a type of contribution, 100%. I think we're going to change the name to booth advertising.
Yeah.
So because, by the way, they spend, the top slot is 75 grand. There's 4 of them. We have way more demand than we have slots. But when you look at, they had 34 people at the WordCamp. They spent more than 75 grand on the booth. And, you know, let's do the math on flying 34 people to Portland, putting them in hotels for 4 days. Like, so it's the sponsorship is a small % of the marketing they're doing. And they meet customers there. So we have thousands of attendees. So it's part of, by the way, why do the other hosts do it as well? You can kind of look around. There's like Bluehost there, Automatic's there. Yeah, everyone does it. We do it to get customers.
But it's still a method of contribution.
You keep saying that. Sure, it's a method of contribution. But is it altruistic? Or is it marketing? Which part of the budget do you think it comes out of?
Would them contribute, is 5 for the Future purely altruistic?
So let me put it this way. The IRS would not say it's a nonprofit contribution.
Yeah. Would they say contributing to the WordPress open source projects a nonprofit contribution?
No.
Exactly.
They don't.
So, but that's what
and by the
these
way,
are equally.
It used to be the foundation used to do all the events. The reason we had to create the for-profit subsidiary was because the sponsors kept breaking the nonprofit rules. It was threatening our nonprofit status. That's why we had to create the for-profit sub.
That makes sense. But in the same sense, 5 for the Future code contributions also aren't nonprofit donations.
They are not.
Exactly.
Under US
so
law.
I don't think this is a fair point to bring up, because both of these things, in the same sense, are not donations.
Again, I've tried to acknowledge their contributions. I've just said they paid 75 grand to have a booth at WordCamp. Now, what I've gone after them for is the trademark confusion, which 54% of your audience thinks is confusing.
I'm going to run another poll after this one. Do people feel as though the initial...
Why don't I ask the conference question? That's a good one. So
it's sponsored. Yeah, I did. It's a 50-50 split-ish. Yeah, it's 48 say is sponsoring WordCamp type of contribution. 48% say yes. 43% say no.
And what percentage would you say would change your mind there?
This one is making me shift a little bit. I would have expected it to be much larger towards contributing towards a conference is absolutely a contribution. I would have guessed closer to 70. This is a surprise to me. I absolutely consider contributing to events like I'm in the
React. Kind of depends on the event.
Yeah, I'm deeply in the React ecosystem. I consider the companies that sponsored ReactConf this year to absolutely be contributing to the React ecosystem, because if they didn't, it would be very realistic for that event to not have been run at all and possibly not happen next year. And I consider these types of sponsorships and contributions absolutely important. I don't know behind the scenes if they had people fighting for that top spot. I don't know behind the scenes if it was profitable or not. I know none of those things because for most conferences, these aren't things people know. But I would look at the companies that sponsor that event and be like, yes, they are contributing to the React ecosystem by sponsoring the React conference. This is important, and I'm happy that they are here doing this.
I think it depends on the event too.
Yes.
So WordCamps, by the way, the tickets for a 3 or 4 day event with meals and everything like that, $100.
That is really cheap for that event.
So part of why we do that is we bring in lots of newbies.
Yes.
So if you go to WordCamp, there's developer tracks. There's also people there that are just bloggers and like just starting. And so part of the reason sponsors like it is because they can get lots of new customers. Because people are like, oh, let me find a good WordPress host. What's the most trusted WordPress hosting platform? Oh, this WP Engine thing looks pretty nice. WordPress Engine, that sounds official.
How do I put this point? Do I want to go down this one yet, or do I want to go straight to Silver Lake? Because I kind of want to go straight to Silver Lake.
And
Because
how are we doing on time? Like how much stuff do you have left?
I only have 2 major questions left. And
how long have we been streaming?
There
by the
are
way?
some. We're going for about an hour and a half.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we go for.
We
it
talked
flies.
about going 45 minutes. Wow.
Yeah, we have a lot to talk about. So the thing I
How
want
many
to do
people
quick.
are watching, by the way?
I have no idea, no easy way to check it right now.
Oh, okay.
I tend to not look at those numbers. They mean, like, I only go live to talk with my community as I'm making good content.
Huh.
The people who I care about are always here. I trust them to let me know if anything is wrong. But my angle with all of this is always to be more focused on making the best possible video for the end result. So the view count doesn't help with me with that at all.
Cool.
So apparently people are saying in chat, I have about 500 on Twitch and about 1,000 on YouTube. Okay. I did not expect YouTube to be that huge. That is unusual and really cool. So I have 2 questions I want to go over, but there's also some super chats I want to do first. Super chats on YouTube are a way for people to spend money to make their message like much more visible.
Cool.
One person, and it's a bit rude, so I'll do it to like filter it out. Can you let Matt know that many small business owners are suffering from this right now? We host over 300 sites on WordPress Engine. The only people truly suffering at this moment are mostly small business owners, and they don't know any better.
Thank you for letting me know that.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry that WP Engine's actions have hurt you, or you consider my actions. That's why we did the reprieve. They have until Monday nights to change their update server and everything. They have the ability to. So all of the code is GPL. They can host it themselves. They can run it themselves. So
apparently, somebody in chat is claiming that they had a project, PHP Wasm, and the WordPress project made a clone of it called @PHP-Wasm. And how is that not the same thing as what is going on here?
I'm just hearing about that now.
Okay.
So whoever said that, if you want me to look into that, you can DM me. My DMs are open on Twitter at Photomat.
I will say,
and I'm happy to follow up on there.
Matt is very accessible to the person who made that super chat. I don't want to
I'm getting a lot of messages right now,
Yes.
so it might take me a week or 2 to get back to you. But please reach out. I'm happy to look into that if you think that's an issue.
Yeah. And I'm sorry that you felt like you had to super chat multiple times, AD. I was going to ask that at all points. I just didn't have a chance because we were in the middle of the other bits. That's another good question. If you had your pick on sponsors because there were so many options, why did you continue to pick WP Engine if you felt like they were not a good player in the space?
Because they kept saying they were going to be.
Okay.
So they've been leading me on forever. So I kept believing them. I feel like a fool, and I didn't realize that people could run business this way and be so deceptive. But yeah, I felt led on.
Do you feel like it would have been more likely for them to make a deal if you had ramped up the public attack on them slightly slower? If instead of going immediate guns blazing with the blog post and the referring to them as a cancer and like at an event they were sponsoring, berating them on stage, if instead you had started in a more subtle way, like, hey, I'm happy that everybody is here. There are companies in the space I don't consider good actors. There are even some here that I feel like are not contributing back enough.
Yeah.
I hate that because it's important for everybody in this ecosystem, everybody that's benefiting from this, to be putting something back. And I hope the companies that are not putting back enough are down to reconsider and then not do anything for a month or 2, go back to private negotiations. If it continues to not happen, escalate slightly more.
Yeah.
Don't let them sponsor WordCamp next year. Be like, no, these types of things are a thing you can't do anymore. Things that don't directly hurt their customers, but hurt their business. Because we went from not doing anything to hurt WP Engine at all. In fact, being quite supportive of them, to immediately going to a level of damage that doesn't even just hurt WP Engine or their customers. The optics of this whole situation hurt the optics of WordPress fundamentally. Like, people will now be, possibly forever, more scared of their use of WordPress due to the fact that something like this is possible and it can escalate this quickly.
Maybe. We'll see in our growth numbers in the next year, so we can check in on how we're doing.
Okay.
And let me introduce a few facts to this. So I can think of one example where we banned someone from WordCamps before. It was actually Pantheon.
But
so they got banned for a few years. Then I forget how long, and then they were allowed back. They were actually a sponsor of this WordCamp. So
I'm not saying ban them. I'm saying don't let them sponsor.
That's what we did let Pantheon sponsor. And then now they're a sponsor again. So my default is definitely much more friendly engagement. If you look at my 21-year history of running WordPress, people are like, oh, he got in this fight with this thesis guy. Yeah. I think that's my last big fight. I think it was like 20.
I couldn't find any major beef since then. So
was it like, what year was that?
2015.
2015?
So about 10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, so that was, 2015.
But it did, I will say, from reading through what happened there, it seemed similarly, I don't know a better word other than petty. Like, it went a little further than it should have, a lot faster than it should have, and spending $100,000 on a domain to like get at somebody is weird vibes.
Can I restate what he was doing wrong? It was not a trademark violation. He was violating the GPL license. So his claim was that a WordPress theme was not derivative of GPL code. And if you know how, that was his claim. So our stance, and the stance of the Free Software Foundation and everyone else, is that plugins and themes for WordPress, because of how they tie into our hooks and action system, need to be GPL.
Would it be? I don't want to just nerd out about open source licensing stuff.
Let's nerd out for a second.
Okay, we'll nerd out for a second. So,
and by the way, Free Software Foundation agrees. I got everyone to check on this.
Okay, so there are absolutely plugins that are GPL licensed for WordPress and other things, like the Stripe plugins, the WooCommerce plugins, all of those things, where they only function if a paid-for service is attached to them.
Totally fine.
Cool.
That's
so
not a GPL violation.
If he had made
he was relicensing, so he was not abiding by the virality.
Okay. But
of
if
the
he
GPL
was
license.
to have the PHP code, for example, for the theme, that was all open sourced, but all of the style sheets were paid for.
That's possible.
Okay.
So I think style sheets is not counted as linking. The PHP code is counted as linking under the nerdy GPL stuff.
So. So that was the
argument in 2015.
Yes.
So he was violating the GPL license. GPL license is really important to me. I'm like an open source deal it. So
would you believe that by open sourcing the thing that binds the CSS, or even if it was like it gets the layout from a database that it like caches locally, but it applies it through this PHP code, and that code is open source, like abstracting as much as possible, but the shim for it is open source?
I mean, as long as the PHP code is GPL, that was our only argument. The PHP code could be load a file remotely and execute it. As long as that code was GPL, it's fine.
So I guess my issue here is that it feels like he could have arbitrarily gotten around this. And on one hand, it's dumb that he didn't. On the other hand, it makes the whole argument feel kind of dumb. But beyond that, the decision to buy the domain that he wanted to use for the project, thesis.com, for $100,000 as a way of like prodding at him felt petty. I'm not saying it was. I'm saying it could be absolutely perceived that way. And what I care about here isn't how you or I feel directly. It is important and it matters, but the way these things are perceived externally is much more important.
That's his claim that we did that.
Okay.
There's other reasons we could own thesis.com. For example, I believe at the time we were considering like a project around hosting things. And by the way, do you know about the UDPR or UDRP or something?
No.
Uniform Domain Resolution Policy. So I can run something that if a trademark holder believes a domain holder is violating their trademark, they can go to ICANN and get it back. We've done this many times with the WordPress trademark. So he could have done that if he felt like what we were doing was a trademark violation.
There's a specific pattern I want to call out here where we have a conversation about a thing that you see as like morally deficient, like the GPL stuff. Is it legally deficient? Yes. We could abstract from there, but I think the reason this happened is you didn't feel good about him doing that. Is that
No? You're ascribing an opinion to me. He was violating the GPL license. That was the beef.
Okay.
Now, and my other point was that 21 years, there's like 1 or 2 examples before this. So yes, if you're worried about the future of WordPress, yes, once every 7 to 10 years, I might get in a fight with a company.
Yep.
But I think that's, if you look at our growth and how many successful businesses are built on WordPress, the WordPress ecosystem is probably 10 billion a year. So I think there's many more examples of it being fine.
But can we take a moment to commiserate with the WordPress users, WordPress developers, WordPress ecosystem members that have concerns right now based on how this was all handled?
Okay, let's commiserate.
No, really, though, like I think it's important to tell them that like you are committed
to doing. Want me to do?
I want you to commit to in the future when issues like this are had with the WordPress trademark, that you'll put an effort to find a path forward that does the least damage to developers using WordPress.
I will do every effort to resolve things amicably. Every effort. And
what you consider amicably and what does actual damage to current WordPress users that love WordPress, that recommend it to all their friends, that are huge members of this community, that are scared right now. I think there is value in committing to them that in the future, this rapid escalation and the trust that it can harm is a thing that you will go out of your way to try and prevent.
I'll do my best there. Do I ever screw up? Yes, 100% times.
Absolutely. So, I'm not even asking you to acknowledge that this was a screw up.
I think parts of it could have been handled better. And you've convinced me of that. By the way, the community convinced me of that. I had lots of people reach out. So that's why we reversed the ban and everything like that.
And if like there was a path here where I think you could have handled this really well, gotten a really good deal with them, and not had the community as concerned as they are at the moment. Like the fact that I have 1,700 people watching us live right now says a lot about how much concern there is about these things.
You're holding me to a standard. Can you also hold WP Engine to a standard that they could have resolved this in a million other ways?
Sure. But it also, let's dive into my second to last point here. Actually, we kind of just did my last question with this, like we'll wrap it up that part, and then I'll do the Silver Lake deep dive. But the last like core point about this in the community, how much damage to the WordPress community is acceptable in these disputes?
Oh, I would prefer 0.
Yes, but not preference. Like if, like, let's say that WP Engine was 10 times worse, that they were actively telling people, we are the only official WordPress. WordPress.com isn't real. We are the one. How much potential damage to WordPress users in the community would you be willing to eat in the process of ending that?
Again, my preference would be 0.
Your preference would be 0, but can you imagine a threshold where it's like, okay, this is too much, like this affects too many, like let's say they also had over 50% of WordPress users using their stuff. Would it be okay to immediately cut them off, or even like have a path where the users on there might be less secure and it might damage the over half of WordPress developers, assuming that they were being even more egregious?
So they could run their own update servers.
Yes.
By the way, we do that for WordPress.com.
But didn't you say that specifically, like the tech to make those work reliably and safely was a lot of time and investment?
Yeah, we did that. So I mean, WordPress.com hosts millions of WordPress sites. We manage all that.
Yes.
So if WordPress.org went away, WordPress.com sites would be fine. Pressable sites would be fine. Bluehost Cloud sites would be fine.
Interesting.
Right? So yeah, we made that investment.
Would you say WP Engine is the biggest host that relies on WordPress.org as their like update layer?
No, other hosts have more.
Okay.
I would say again, they're uniquely egregious in their abuse. They're also one of the only hosts that's 100% WordPress.
Okay.
Most other hosts are like 50-50. So they're like 100% WordPress
but
though.
That's actually part of what I think is what is hard for me to understand. I feel like if I have a stack called the T3 stack. It's one of the more popular ways to build with Next.js nowadays. If somebody was to brand themselves as like the best place to host T3 stack applications or the ultimate T3 stack host, I would see that as, or I would be hyped.
Yeah.
I would be really excited about that, to see people betting that heavily on this technology.
How about if I started tpengine.com and then my homepage said the most trusted place to host TP stack.
So like T3 is my trademark.
Sorry, T3.
But like T3 is my specific trademark. WP is not part of the trademark. If my trademark was just Theo and T3 was a thing I just like didn't even like directly use, it was just a common. But like if I went by Theo Brown, like my full name, and somebody did like TB dash something.
Yeah. Do you have the trademark for the number and also spelled out like T THREE.
No, but if somebody was to do THRE hosting, I would not consider that particularly egregious.
So if I registered THREE.com and then offered
The best T3 hosting platform,
Yeah.
or I would not care.
Okay, that's good to know. So we
Yeah.
should do that.
Yep. Funny enough, there was somebody who did the T4 stack, which was very clearly meant to be misleading and pull people from my community, which was really funny. And then they're the only person making money off of T3, the trademark right now, which is hilarious. But
This is a good example, though.
Yes.
You're the trademark owner. You get to decide.
yes.
So you can decide this.
Yep.
And you could talk to a lawyer as well.
And even
say,
then, I went so out of my way with them privately. They were assholes privately and publicly, and they were the ones who escalated. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to call this guy out. And this is the first time I've even said T4, like publicly, in probably a year at this point. And that, I could rant forever about how awful that particular individual is, but like that's a separate thing that is still something I'm not going to pursue legally. And my issue with them has nothing to do with the legal or trademark thing. I think, and this is the point I was trying to make earlier, is that like someone going 100% on WordPress, in my opinion, is something, if I was in your position, I'd be excited about versus somebody doing 50-50 of their customers. Like that, like somebody who's 100% betting on WordPress, to me, feels like a better community member than somebody who's 50-50 on their bet.
Okay. Hey, let's get you some more water.
Yeah, of course. Oh, thank you. Yeah.
Do you mind?
Oh, no worries. I'm fine, by the way.
I'll have a Coca-Cola. Thank you.
New people are asking. Okay.
I don't know how you do these live streams. This is a lot of work.
It's a lot worse when I have multiple things to talk about and like my list of topics I have to get through. This is actually kind of nice for me. It's relatively chill. Apparently T3.com has been registered since 99. So
Yeah, that's a pretty short domain.
Yep.
So
yeah.
I have some awesome domains, by the way. I have w.org, got wp.com, ma.tt. So I love domains. I'm a collector.
Yeah, I understand. I'm also a nerd about domains. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
There you go.
Thank you. Yeah, so I don't want to get too lost in details. People are giving examples of like Git versus GitHub. Again, as Matt said, you can choose how you enforce your trademark. Linus has chosen to not enforce the Git trademark ever, as far as I know. So
Yeah, there's GitHub, there's GitLab. So
Yeah, but like-
that's his choice.
yes, and I guess what people are struggling with is the idea that you are selectively choosing when to enforce it, as is understood publicly, especially because up until this point, you've been positive towards WP Engine, and this feels somewhat sudden, the swap.
Sure.
Yeah, so that was a specific concern.
You got some super questions you want to do?
I have
or do you
this one
end
actually I
on
want to do,
Silver
but I
Lake?
want to get to my other questions right after. So one last super chat question. So a host needs to pass the sniff test. It's unclear what the sniff test is, and the consequences of that, or the consequence of them failing it, is that the WordPress org access might be restricted. And I don't.
There
wording
could
is hard.
be any consequences, right?
What is hard now is as a WordPress developer, it now feels like they have to be careful when they're picking a host to make sure that it is either the official automatic WordPress.com or
recommended.
it is a recommended one. And there is now a fear that picking a WordPress host that isn't on the recommendations list, which WP Engine was up until a point recently.
No, they were never on.
They were never on the recommendations list?
Never.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they were allowed to sponsor WordCamp, and that could be seen as some level of an endorsement.
So yes, I would
Okay,
say
so-
you probably should pick a host that's on a recommended list or a sponsor
so-
of WordCamp.
If somebody picked up WordPress, or
Especially the recommendations. So
if
yes,
somebody
you should
picked up
probably-
WP Engine because they talked with them at WordCamp this year, and they had just moved to it a few days before all of this exploded, and now suddenly they can't update their site, do you feel bad for that person?
Yes.
Can you take ownership of the fact that there was a method to get to the outcomes that you wanted here that would have prevented them from being hurt without risking the likelihood of success with your goals at all?
Sure, you made that point.
Okay, cool. Awesome. That's a huge concession that means a lot to me. Thank you. So, yeah. And you can see why now somebody who might have been affected by that now feels some level of stress that they might pick wrong and might run into this again.
I would say they probably should consider
Yes.
picking one of the recommended hosts. So
Okay.
there's a reason we recommend them.
Okay.
So
I want to dive into Silver Lake.
Silver Lake, oh,
I have found a lot of weird mixed information all over the place. For context, for those watching, Silver Lake is an investment firm that I believe has fully acquired the WP Engine, or at the very least has board seats.
they control it.
Okay, they control it.
So they own a majority of the voting and everything. And in my presentation
Yes.
at WordCamp, I mentioned other open source things Silver Lake has screwed up.
Okay.
So I think I had 2 or 3 examples.
Do you remember those off the top of your head?
Talon and Unity, maybe. I forget what they were. So check out my presentation. It's at WordCamp.
Yeah.
Or on the WordPress YouTube.
Yeah.
So
So can you give us a timeline of Silver Lake's involvement both in Automatic as well as in or WP Engine without saying information you're not allowed to share?
sure. What's public? They have never been an investor in Automatic. What's public is in 2018, they purchased a majority of WP Engine for $250 million.
Was there ever a point where you were in negotiations with Silver Lake for potentially investing in Automatic?
No.
No? Okay. I try to remember where I had heard it from, but that might have been a thing, but not a big deal either way.
Yeah, not to my recollection.
Okay.
I have met with Lee many times over the years. Like I said, he used to be on the board of GoDaddy. I don't believe they are anymore. And GoDaddy is a public company. I think
Yep.
they were a smaller investor. They weren't a control investor. And he has been on the board of WP Engine. I'm not sure exactly, but I think since the acquisition in 2018.
Makes sense. Really good information to have. I had heard somewhere that there might have been some back and forth way earlier on between you and Silver Lake for potential negotiations. So good to know.
I will say we have talked many times over the years about working more closely with WP Engine. That's fair to say.
Yeah. So, but specifically, Miles is begging for attention. But specifically, Automatic and Silver Lake have never been in meaningful negotiations for potential investment or collaboration.
In Automatic, not to my
Yes.
recollection. No.
Okay.
By the way,
So-
Automatic
yes.
has raised a ton of money. We have great investors. I didn't at the time in my 20s control it, but now I vote 84% of the shares through proxy agreements with different investors. So I think every share that's traded hands since 2012, maybe. Oh, we got another cat in there.
Yeah, he wants to come say hi.
Hello. I have a voting proxy for. So that's part of the reason, by the way, that I'm able to run Automatic in a way that we've never changed the license and all that other stuff. So it's
Yeah, really good context to have. So at what point would you say your relationship with Silver Lake started to go sour?
that's a good question. I would say that, as recently as January, I took a sabbatical, by the way, in February, March, and April. Actually, was very busy prior to that. I met with Heather twice, like I think on the 24th and 28th. And Lee I've met with before. So I would say I really thought they were going to do a deal since January. The guy who ran Automatic for a few months, Tony Schneider, was like, he met with her. He thought there was going to be a deal during his time. When I came back, I was like, why isn't there a deal? Kept working on it. So when did I realize they were just delaying and leading me on? Honestly, probably last week.
Okay. So this is actually really good.
I feel
just like,
dumb, but like that's when
I almost want to do this part off stream, but for the sake of like everyone, like if I was a friend or knew of you before this, right when I saw things explode, I would have just personally reached out and like, man, there's a more productive way to do this. Cause like the 1 week from realizing they're leading you on to this explosion, especially with in between, like some of the texts you sent optically are terrifying.
The ones they cherry picked, totally.
Yes, absolutely. But like,
They show the whole thread, publish the whole thread.
So the reason I bring it up, like, I'm not saying this as a gotcha. I'm saying this so that we can sympathize with the people who have concerns right now. My goal here isn't to be like, you screwed up, you're terrible, like, you need to realize all these things are bad. It's optically, for people externally, these things result in less trust and concerns. And I want to make sure that you understand, as a person who cares about these things, and I, as a person who wants these ecosystems to be as successful as possible, that you understand enough of why people feel this way so that you can be more likely to succeed in your goals in the future and scare the people who love and have bet on WordPress less in the process.
I mean, why is, Silver Lake Private Equity trying to smear me? Why did they dox our private text?
You started the public smearing.
They had no permission to publish our private communications.
Yes.
Why have they doxed our public text? And why did they not publish any of their messages? They only published mine. So, this is a smear campaign. By the way, they're going to have the nastiest lawyers, the nastiest smear campaigns. They're going to do Palantir and Cambridge Analytica stuff against me. So,
I as a person who I want you to be able to be successful with these things, and I want WordPress and WordPress developers to be able to trust and not be concerned. You're a leader. You're a BDFL. You need to do better than them.
I would love you to hold them to a very high standard. Silver Lake stands to lose billions of dollars on their investment if we are successful in convincing the public that WP Engine is maybe not the best WordPress host.
I think there were ways to convince the public of that would have made the public less scared.
I'll call you next time. I'd love your advice.
Yes. I unironically, you have my number now. I'm actually down. The next time you are feeling this level of emotional vitriol towards anyone in or around any of these spaces, actually call me. I want to try and talk you off the cliff before things get this bad.
Okay, well, statistically, it's probably going to be around 2033. So let's plan. We'll make a date to talk in 2033.
Excited for it. But how at this point, regardless of, you are the one who has escalated the most with this.
No, I believe they've escalated it quite a bit. And I wish I could share more of the stuff they've done privately, but I can't.
I understand that. Publicly, you can see why most people would perceive it as though you have escalated the most here.
Sure.
Yeah.
I know.
And this is like whether or not the things you do are right, whether or not you believe the things you did were right, whether or not I believe the things you do are right, the community overall feels as though the things you did, at the very least, went too far too fast and had impacts on WordPress users that they felt were unfair.
Sure. And by the way, this is not going through a PR person.
Of course.
This is not going through my lawyers. So yes,
it's very honest.
I'm gonna mess up.
Yes.
I started as an engineer. I coded WordPress.
I know.
I contributed a lot of code. I wasn't a CEO before. I didn't go to business school. I haven't had public relations training. I'm going to screw this up.
Yeah.
So,
but for the sake of the community, I think it's important to commit as the person in charge of WordPress.org, the person who runs Automatic, and the person who is trying to make WordPress the best way to build for the web, that you commit to going out of your way to find healthier methods to do these things in the future and better ways to call out bad players that don't so quickly turn to damaging WordPress users.
I will commit to that.
Awesome.
What do you think is a good threshold? 1 month of notice, a year of notice, a week of notice?
I think there's multiple parts. The notice is one important detail, but the more important thing to me is the knowledge for the business, and soon after the knowledge for the public that there are concerns. Because to the average person who is a WordCamp attendee, you went from thinking WP Engine was totally fine and them as a sponsor of WordCamp, totally fine, to all of a sudden they are a cancer to the ecosystem. That same day switch is terrifying. So that's the big thing that needs to be avoided.
This is not a good defense, but I will say that did you see my ecosystem thinking post?
Yes.
So that was earlier in the week, prior to WordCamp. So
Yes.
that was, I forget what day it was, but I think it might have been Tuesday or Wednesday. Yes. But so that was before.
If there was,
but yes, it was a matter of days.
If there was a month between these things, even you started with a call out at WordCamp that's the example I gave before.
Yeah.
You use that as leverage in your conversations with Heather and the other people at the company and the people on the board. Continued to not go well. You then, even just a small tweet or something it really sucks that one of the biggest WordPress hosts doesn't contribute meaningfully back
I
to
did
WordPress.
the blog post. So I was raising the pressure on them.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
The blog post called them a cancer.
Uh-huh. The blog post called them cancer on Tuesday?
Yes. Was it? It was the one you posted the same day as the WordCamp talk.
So that one did.
Yes.
But the
When
blog
was
post that was, I think that was Friday.
Okay.
But we can look this up. But the one earlier in the week did not call them cancer.
But did it call them out specifically?
It did.
Okay.
Yes.
That is news to me. So on Tuesday last week, you called them out
specifically. Let me double check this
Okay.
just to make sure, because I do want to be accurate. Now everyone go visit ma.tt since we gave so much traffic to WP Engine and everything like that. So let's see.
Hey,
September.
Embed, I did see your message with the trademark. I'll ask that in a minute.
September 17th. Okay. So here's the paragraph I published. Do you want me to read it or do you want to read it?
I can read it quick. Okay. So compare the 5 for the future pages from Automatic and WP Engine, 2 companies that are roughly the same size with revenue in the ballpark of $500 million. These pledges are just a proxy and aren't perfectly accurate, but as I write this, Automatic has over 3,786 hours per week, not even counting me, and WP Engine has 47 hours. WP Engine has good people, some of whom are listed on that page, but the company is controlled by Silver Lake, a private equity firm with $102 billion in assets under management. If Silver Lake doesn't give a dang about your open source ideals, it just wants a return on capital. That's a significant call out. Did you ever send this to them?
Of course.
Okay, just making sure. No, I'm clear, dotting all my I's and crossing all my T's. Cool. I'm reading the rest of this blog post. He called out examples of companies that are contributing meaningfully right after. This helps with my perspective a lot, knowing that this post existed and you were still letting it. So I'm assuming the sponsorship agreement for WordPress or for WordCamp was long before any of this. Okay.
And that's also why we didn't kick them out during the events. Because
of course,
it would have violated the contract.
Yep.
They could have said, "Hey, we paid you." By the way, I offered them the money back even after everything.
Yes.
I said, "Hey, if you want the $75K back, we'll send it back." Because maybe they're like, "Oh, we didn't get what we." But they had the booth for the whole time. They talked to probably hundreds or maybe 1,000 people. But I offered them a full refund.
This is good context to have. If this post existed, if this was a thing that was well known amongst people in the space, was going on, more time was had, and then the strong call out happened. Like if this post was made like 2 months before WordCamp,
Even better.
then
Yes,
I wouldn't have even covered this. This would have been like, oh, not my problem.
Yeah.
But the optics of you went from being supportive of this business to calling them out to very soon after on stage calling them out at a conference they paid to be at, immediately follow with a blog post calling them cancer. That is terrifying as a person in the community, especially because like this has been around for 21 years. 5 days is a very short amount of time in a 21-year timeline.
And I will also admit that I can be I'm very like a calm in person, but my prose can be fiery.
Yes.
Right. So I'm a writer. I consider like writing like an artistic expression, and sometimes I can get a little colorful with my phrasing.
Did anybody proof the post before you posted it?
Of course.
Oh, good to know.
Yeah. Automatic has a full. Oh, something cool Automatic does. We host a run long reads and the Atavist magazine, which by the way has won National Magazine Awards. So we employ some of the top editors in the country.
That's insane. I had no idea.
Yeah, so long reads and Atavist. I have fantastic editorial people at Automatic, and I tap into them for things like this.
Yeah.
That they make my writing way better, by the way.
Yes, I have done a lot of copy editing. Part of how I got into the scene, believe it or not, is I offered to do a copy pass for a couple more prominent like web dev people that I was very much looked up to. And they were so thankful for me helping them with like the wording of their blog posts that they pulled me into places I should not have been so early in my career and kickstarted my creator journey. So huge shout out to Ryan Carniato, to the creator of Astro, Fred Schott, as well as to Tanner Lindsley, creator of TanStack, and Ryan Carniato is the creator of Solid.js. They're essential to my success in the space, and that started from me just copy editing their stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah, these things are really important to me. 2 last things. This one is a trademark that one of my community members found. Apparently, y'all have the trademark for managed WordPress.
Okay.
Does that not mean almost every place that has WordPress hosting is in violation of your trademark?
A lawyer would have to evaluate that. So I'm not a lawyer. I don't want to comment on that.
Totally fair. But you can see why people would be concerned now that if this is about a trademark dispute, that a trademark that generic is petrifying about this possibly happening again.
I think that to maintain a trademark, you have to enforce it. I will say that if you look at all the businesses built in WordPress, we allow I don't want to say this without messing up our legal case, but like, yes, there's many things that are below the threshold.
Yes.
That would be legally confusing in the market. So yeah.
Totally fair response.
And I have no current beef, no C&Ds publicly with any other host or any other person in the WordPress community.
So it's fair to say this is a very unique situation.
Yes.
To go back to the long thing I was saying earlier, I think due to the unique nature of the situation, a uniquely kind, optically public approach, because of think about how long they dragged you on for.
Yeah.
You should have done the same. Play at their level. Drag them along the same way. Very slowly start to damage their reputation in a way that terrifies them. You could have done even more damage to them potentially.
Honestly, not my style.
That's fair. But as a CEO and the representative of the community, there are things that aren't our style. There's a lot of things that aren't my style that I have to do now as the representative of a lot of people that many more even look up to. And it kills me at times to not be able to, like the amount of times I've written a tweet as a reply and then deleted it or screenshot it and sent it to my CTO for an approval before I sent it. Like, it's actually hilarious. I have deleted more things I've typed than I've posted on Twitter for like over a year now. And
that's probably good.
Yes, it is. And that's the thing I really want to encourage here is like, it's important to be the boss when you are the BDFL, especially for something as important, inarguably as important as WordPress. It's literally like nearly half of the web. It is so important to have you specifically be way kinder than is even fair in order to make these egregious cases not like something that was as negative as what you went through here should not result in you being this negative. It sucks. It is terrible. But at the same time, it is important as a representative of this community and as the one who pushes them forward to eat some shit and get through that. And it sucks. We have to do it.
I agree.
Awesome.
And I want to thank you. I would say continue to hold me to a high standard. With great power comes great responsibility.
Absolutely.
Right? So please hold me to a high standard in the future. Give me this feedback. I'm listening to the feedback here. And I definitely keep this in mind for the future. So I've learned a lot through this. Yep. So thank you.
Yep. My one last thing. It's small.
Yeah, where do you want to end?
I think it's important. Can you see why WordPress.com and WordPress.org is a confusing thing for people?
Sure.
Awesome. With other companies like Vercel, for example, Next.js isn't the host. Vercel's the host. And they both get talked about equally at this point. Before, it was not like that at all. But even for me, like I started using Vercel before I ever used Next.js by like over a year. And even though they're so clearly tied, they're so clearly funding each other, that is what the ecosystem in the open source world nowadays is used to, is like a company with one name is funding a thing with a different name. And if others are using the other thing's name in their branding, it's like, whatever. They're not, as long as they're not using Vercel's name, it's fine.
That's why WordPress.com has to have a trademark license.
Yes.
By the way, WordPress.com could lose the trademark license if 2 of the 3 board members of the WordPress Foundation decided they were not a good steward. So that's the way I set it up. So if someone bought Automatic or something like that, or I wasn't in control, it could lose the trademark license.
Actually, one last question on that. Are either of the 2 other board members meaningful stakeholders in Automatic?
0.
0. Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
That is actually huge. So there would not be a financial incentive for them to benefit Automatic if it was, in any way, if the option was like hurt WordPress Foundation and their trademark or hurt Automatic, there is no financial incentive for them to not hurt Automatic.
And I'll describe the 2 people. So I wanted to create a board which felt fair. So Shell is actually a Republican. She's run to be endorsed by Trump and stuff. So very different from my politics.
Yes.
Like my politics are, I don't talk a lot, but you can see my donations. So Mark Gosh was actually a journalist in the WordPress space. So he ran probably the top WordPress journalism site. And he stopped doing that many years ago. But when I was thinking of okay, who would be a good steward of this, he was there. The board's been pretty much the same since the WordPress Foundation started. Previously, Jason Hoffman was on the board, who actually was involved with Node and Joyance and stuff like that. So he was one of my advisors when WordPress was getting started. He actually helped me rack the very first servers that we ever had. When I was down in San Diego putting the data center together, he was, handing them to me, and we were putting the screws together. So he was on the board for a while. and then I forget who took his place, either Mark or Shell. Now, these are people I trust. Neither owns any equity in Automatic. And yeah, do I trust them? Of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just wanted to make sure that like there wasn't a financial incentive for them to defend Automatic in the process. That was all. That is actually really good information. I'll be honest, you've shifted me a bit. I still think the way this was handled bordered on irresponsible, but I am less sympathetic towards WP Engine, but I wish you had given them better public incentives than we're given.
Your last video was pretty harsh.
I know.
But hey, can we shake hands and say,
absolutely.
Thank you so much.
And I hope in the
Appreciate
future I can consider you a friend and that you'll actually take me up on the calling me if there's another thing like this, because the amount of, I would have done so many things like this 100 times worse if I didn't have my group of people to talk me off these cliffs. Yeah. I would do what you did last week monthly if I didn't have my crew to talk me off the stuff. So it's the least I can offer. I hope you take it seriously. And I really hope that going forward, the WordPress community doesn't have to worry about the security and the sanctity of their platforming space.
Me too. So thank you all for watching as well. So many people
thank you everyone for
this
coming
is
by.
Amazing. Like, this is a cool community. Like I am not familiar with Theo, but like I said, I'm going to follow in the future. So you might see me in the chat on future streams.
Awesome. Really appreciate it. Thanks again for stopping by. I will wrap this up now. I don't have any way to end it from here, so I actually have to get up and go to the computer. But
Follow me at photomat and ma.tt.
Y'all know where I am.